I'm Lena. I'm 30 years old, and I'm the founder of Vertex Analytics. 4 years ago, I was just the other daughter, the quiet one. Today, my family is staring at my $5 million lakeside house in Medina, and they have absolutely no idea how I got it. It all started at a dinner. The air smelled like polished silver and expectation. The chandelier hummed. My mother, Helen, raised her wine glass. A toast, she announced. We've finalized the $80,000 for Sara's studies in Paris. My father nodded. It's an investment in her future. My fork froze. I asked, very quietly. What about my dorm deposit? It's $2,000. My mother didn't even blink. She just looked right through me and said, "You don't deserve any help." The air cracked. The sound of her voice was colder than the ice in my water glass. I looked at my father. He just refilled his wine. So I smiled. I nodded. And I stood up. That was the last dinner I ever attended. I walked out, got in my car, and deleted their numbers one by one. They didn't know it, but their account was closed. Has your family ever made you feel like an echo? Like you were just the space around the person they actually cared about? This is how I learned to stop asking for permission, and built a life they couldn't ignore. When I was 10, birthdays were a lesson in family math. Sara's birthday was an event. It meant confetti cannons in the living room, a 3-tiered cake, and cameras flashing. My father would give a speech about her limitless potential. My mother, Helen, would watch her like she was a masterpiece, whispering to our aunts about how Sara was born for the spotlight. My birthday, a few months later, was practical. It meant a bus pass for the next school year, and a lecture from my father about the importance of independence. I remember holding the laminated pass in my hand, the plastic edges sharp. "This is responsibility, Lena," he'd say. "It's better than any toy." I learned to just nod. At home, everything revolved around performance, but only one kind of performance mattered. When Sara joined the debate club, my mother called it leadership training. She bragged about it. When I joined the data science club, she called it a hobby. I remember her walking into my room once. I was tracking migration patterns for a project, my screen filled with spreadsheets and lines of code. She just wrinkled her nose at the tangle of wires by my desk. "Try something people actually notice, Lena," she said, not unkindly, just factually. Like she was advising me on the weather. I wasn't the star. I was the stagehand. My role was to be helpful. That was the word they always used. I was the one who edited Sara's essays, tightening her arguments, fixing her grammar. I was the one who reset her phone when it crashed, who taught her how to use the software she needed for her projects. When it was time for new computers, Sara got the new, top-of-the-line laptop for her creative work. I got her old one, the one with the sticky E key and a fan that whirred like a tiny engine. "You're good with tech," my dad said, clapping me on the shoulder. "You can make it work." And I did. I always made it work. One summer, I used that old laptop to enter a local coding competition. I spent weeks building a predictive model, working late into the night, fueled by instant coffee and the quiet hum of the hard drive. And I won. First place. The email said, "Congratulations, your project ranked first." I stared at the words. I read them maybe 20 times. I went to the local print shop and printed the certificate myself, on the good cardstock. I found my dad in the garage, fixing a sprinkler head. I held it out to him. He took it, squinted at the paper, and nodded once. "Well," he said, handing it back. "That's a start." A start? I felt the heat rise in my chest, a prickle behind my eyes. I just folded the certificate. My mother was in the kitchen. I walked past her, holding it. She was on the phone, laughing about something Sara said. She never even asked what was in my hand. That was the moment, the L3 spike. The air in the garage, the smell of oil and cut grass, it all just crystallized. That's a start. It wasn't praise. It was a dismissal. That same night, Sara posted that she'd merely secured an interview for the Paris exchange program. My phone, resting on my desk, didn't stop. The family group chat exploded. Notifications, GIFs. "Congratulations, we're so proud. You're going to be amazing." My phone battery died from the notifications. None of them were for me. By senior year of high school, I channeled that quiet energy into something new. I taught myself 2 new coding languages and built a simple app. It tracked the local bus routes in real time for students who didn't have cars. It was simple, but it worked. The local paper even did a small feature on it. They called it a clever solution by a local student. I left the paper on the kitchen counter. My mother, Helen, found it. She read the article, her expression unreadable. Then she got a pair of scissors and carefully, precisely, cut the article out. I felt a small, stupid spark of hope. Maybe this was the thing she'd notice. She smoothed the clipping and looked up at me. "You know," she said, tapping the paper, "this is time you could have spent networking." She clipped it, but not for the project. She clipped it because our last name was printed in bold under the title. It was an accessory for her, not an achievement for me. Then came graduation. It was a hot day. The air in the auditorium was thick and still, smelling like floor wax and the cheap polyester of the gowns. I found my family in the crowd. Front row, of course, perfect smiles, pastel outfits. My father waved. Sara was busy texting, probably to the friends she was sitting with across the aisle. I sat in the sea of blue gowns, my hands sweating. I listened as name after name was called. A, B, C. When they got to the L's, my heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Lena," the principal announced, and my last name echoed through the auditorium. I stood up. I walked toward the stage, and I watched my family. They clapped, polite and measured. My father kept his hands in his lap, just nodding. No one stood. No one cheered. Across the aisle, Sara looked up from her phone, clapped twice, and then went right back to texting. I took my diploma. The cardboard folder was warm in my hand. I walked back to my seat, the sound of polite applause fading behind me. I just stared at the embossed lettering on the cover. I'd done it. I'd finished. But holding it, it didn't feel like pride. It felt like proof, like a receipt I had to keep, just in case someone questioned if I'd paid. That night, we had a small cake at the house. My aunt was there, and she kept patting my arm. My mother was glowing. She pulled Sara into a hug, right in front of me, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'm just so proud of both my girls." And then she kissed Sara's temple. "Especially you, sweetheart. Paris is going to be incredible. Especially you." The words just hung in the air. I smiled, because the camera on my aunt's phone was on. Later, alone in my room, I took down the coding competition certificate. I unpinned the green bus pass from my corkboard. I looked at the 2 of them, side by side, the certificate no one cared about, and the bus pass that meant independence. I pinned them up again, right next to each other. The rain outside hit the window in a slow, steady rhythm. That was the night I finally, truly, understood the math of my family. It wasn't complicated. It was binary. Sara equaled light. I equaled silence. The night of the Paris dinner, the air in the dining room was heavy. It smelled like polished silver and slightly overcooked roast beef. Thick, expensive. My sister, Sara, sat across from me, her face glowing under the chandelier. She was rehearsing French phrases, laughing every time she got one wrong. "Non, non, non," my mother, Helen, corrected her, sipping her wine. "The emphasis is on the last syllable. Paris." "Paris!" Sara trilled, and my father chuckled. I'd spent the day in the university library, buried in data structure textbooks, my fingers still stiff from typing. I was just quiet, watching them. My dad cleared his throat, setting his fork down with a deliberate clink. He beamed at Sara, then at my mother. "Well," he said, like an announcement. "We've finalized everything." The room quieted. $80,000, he said, and the number just hung in the air. $80,000 for tuition, the apartment in the 6th, airfare, the works. Sara deserves to be able to focus on her studies, not on money. He lifted his glass. It's an investment in her future. My mother raised her glass, her pearls catching the light. To Sara, 80,000. My own fork froze halfway to my mouth. That was everything. The entire family savings, I was sure of it. Something cold settled in my stomach. I swallowed. I had to force the calm into my voice. "Dad?" He looked at me, his smile still in place, but his eyes were expectant. I'm a little short on my dorm deposit for next semester," I said. My voice sounded small. "It's $2,000. I can pay it back from my work study. I just need it by the 1st. The smile on my mother's face didn't fade. It just froze. She set her glass down, the click of it on the table suddenly deafening. She looked at me, not like a daughter, but like an interruption. "You don't deserve help, Lena." It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was just a statement. A fact. The sound of Sara's giggling stopped. Even my father's smile faltered. The words landed in the center of the table and just cracked. Like glass. I waited. I waited for my dad to say something. To correct her. To laugh it off as a bad joke. He didn't. He just looked at his plate. He picked up his wine glass, swirled the contents, and said, "We put money where it brings returns, Lena. You made your own choices." And that was it. The justification. The sign-off. Something inside me, that small, hopeful part that always waited for the script to change, went perfectly, completely still. I could suddenly hear everything. The low, electric hum of the chandelier, the scrape of my father's knife against his plate, the smell of candle wax. Every detail pressed into my memory. I looked at my mother's hard, satisfied face. I looked at my father, already focused on his food. I smiled. It was a small smile, sharp. "I understand," I said. No one answered. The moment was over. They had already moved on. I put my napkin on the table. I pushed my chair back. The legs screeched across the hardwood floor, a sound louder than anything I could have ever said. My mother looked up, annoyed by the noise. I didn't say goodnight. I didn't grab my coat. I just turned, walked out of the dining room, down the hall, and out the front door. Outside, the air was cold. The Seattle rain had just started, tapping on my windshield like fingers counting time. I got in my car, and I didn't look back. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone was buzzing. A text from my mother. "Don't be dramatic. You'll regret this." Then one from my dad. "Your mother is upset. Come back and apologize." I stared at the messages. The same script. I was dramatic. I was the problem. I was responsible for her feelings. I didn't reply. I just turned my phone over, face down on the counter. The screen lit up a few more times, casting a faint, angry glow, and then it went dark. The silence that followed felt clean. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. The gray Seattle light was just filtering in. I made coffee, sat at my small kitchen table, and picked up my phone. One by one, I deleted every family contact. Mom, Helen, delete. Dad, delete. Sara, delete. Aunts, uncles, cousins, every link. It wasn't angry. It was just necessary. Like clearing old code that was breaking the whole system. My studio apartment in Capitol Hill was small. You could smell the entire place from the doorway. It smelled faintly of detergent from the laundromat downstairs and burnt toast from my neighbor's kitchen. The heater clicked every 10 minutes, a sound I'd come to rely on. This was my space. My space. I opened my laptop. The sticky E key clicked. I created a new folder on the desktop. I stared at the blinking cursor for a moment, then typed, "Life plan." Inside it, I created 3 files: savings goals, projects, boundaries. I wasn't sure what I was building yet. I just knew it would run better if no one else had the password. My life became a rhythm. By day, I was a barista. I brewed coffee for strangers. I wiped down counters. I smiled. The smell of roasted beans and steamed milk clung to my clothes. By night, I was a different person. I'd come home, shower, and sit under the yellow glow of my cheap desk lamp, the rain constant against the glass. I coded. I analyzed open-source data sets. I built small, useless programs just to see if I could. I tracked every hour. I tracked every cent. I measured my life in small, quiet returns. A few months later, I landed a part-time job. It was just an entry-level IT gig at a small startup downtown called Vertex Analytics. The first time I walked in, it was like stepping into a different world. glass walls, shiny whiteboards covered in equations. The air smelled of new carpet and ambition. My new badge felt heavy in my hand. Lena, it read. Vertex Analytics. I was supposed to just fix printers and reset passwords. But at night, when the office was empty and quiet, it was mine. I'd stay late, digging into the company's data models. They were clunky, inefficient. I started optimizing them, just as a side project. That's when Ben, one of the senior analysts, noticed me. He leaned over my desk one evening, long after everyone else had gone home. My screen was glowing with lines of code. He watched for a full minute. "You're optimizing our predictive models," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded, my heart jumping. "Just a side project." He smiled, a real smile. "Make it your main one," he said. "If it works, we'll pitch it." We did. 2 weeks later, Quantify, our new prototype, was born. We started testing it with small businesses, local bakeries, optimizing ingredient orders, flour deliveries, predicting neighborhood demand. Each data set I cleaned, each line of code that ran clean. It felt like reclaiming a piece of the control I'd lost at that dinner table. My roommate, Priya, sometimes dropped by the office late, usually with a warm paper bag of takeout. "You're obsessed," she teased one night, handing me a container of noodles. I looked up from the screen, my eyes burning. "I'm building distance," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "From what?" I thought for a second. "From permission." The months blurred into graphs and quiet victories. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Walsh. Her office was quiet, smelled faintly of old books and tea, and for the first time, I talked. I told her everything. The bus pass, the certificate, the $80,000 dinner. She listened. She really listened. And then she gave me the vocabulary for what I'd lived through. Conditional love, she said, her voice gentle. Emotional invalidation. I told her how I was always praised for being helpful, for being practical. Dr. Walsh nodded, lacing her fingers. "Lena," she said, "they didn't reward you for being good. They rewarded you for being useful." That word, useful, it landed like a hammer. She meant it as a diagnosis, but I heard it as a direction. I left her office and walked for hours in the rain. They saw useful as a role, like a screwdriver or an appliance. Something you put back in the drawer when you were done. Fine. Then I'll make usefulness my own. I went back to Vertex Analytics with a new focus. I wasn't just building a project, I was building proof. I let the data do the talking. Numbers spoke, reports replaced arguments. My work was clean, undeniable, and it didn't need anyone's permission to be correct. Quantify became the engine of the entire company. Ben and I were working 18-hour days, and our models were outperforming everything on the market. It got too big, too fast. The CEO called us in. They wanted to spin it off into its own entity, a new company, Vertex Analytics. Ben and I would be co-founders. My new title, founder and lead analyst. My name, first on the letterhead. We signed the incorporation papers in a glass conference room on the 40th floor, overlooking Lake Union. It was raining that constant, steady Seattle static. Raindrops streaked down the massive windows, blurring the city into a watercolor of gray and steel. Ben signed, his signature a quick, confident scrawl. He slid the heavy fountain pen across the polished table to me. I picked it up. I thought of that dinner, of my hand trembling so hard I could barely hold my fork. I thought of my mother's cold eyes. I put the pen to the paper. My hand was perfectly still. I signed my name, Lena. The ink was dark and permanent. It wasn't a request, it was a statement. From that day on, I had a new rule, for my business and my life. Document everything. Every milestone, every invoice, every line of code, every success. I built an archive of my own value. It wasn't paranoia, it was architecture. I was building a structure that no one could ever tear down, a case for my own life that was airtight. The next 4 years were a blur of expansion. We hired a team. We moved to a bigger office. Our predictive financial model, the one I'd started building on a hand-me-down laptop, hit the national news. An angel investor flew in from New York. He sat in our conference room, the one overlooking the lake, and we didn't give him a pitch. We gave him a report. We showed him the numbers. He backed us. I didn't buy new clothes. I didn't take fancy vacations. I still drove my old car. I just worked. I upgraded my laptop, and I let the numbers in my bank account grow. Until one Tuesday, 4 years after that last dinner, my phone pinged, a real estate app, a listing I'd flagged, almost as a joke. A lakeside home in Medina, minimalist, all glass and cedar, facing the water. It cost $5 million. I opened my portfolio. I looked at the numbers. They were just data. And the data said yes. I bought it. No cosigners, no permission, no shared names, my name, just mine. It happened on a Saturday. 4 years. 4 years of silence, of building, of breathing my own air. The sunlight was slipping through the wide glass panes of my new house, turning the hardwood floor into strips of gold. My partner, Liam, and I were just about to leave for the farmer's market. My phone lit up, an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. I always ignore unfamiliar numbers. But instinct, or maybe just curiosity, made me swipe. Hello? A pause. Then, a shaky, scattered breath. Lena? I didn't recognize the voice. Not at first. It was thinner, higher. It's me, Sara. My blood went cold. The coffee mug in my hand felt suddenly heavy. I stood up from the counter and walked to the glass wall overlooking the lake. 4 years. Not a single word. Sara. I just drove past Medina. She was crying now. That high, thin sound I remembered so well. Your name is on the gate. Your name. Do you really live there? I looked at my own faint reflection in the glass. What are you trying to ask, Sara? Her voice snapped, the familiar, sharp edge of envy cutting through the tears. Why do you have that? The call dropped. I stared at the blank screen. Liam looked over. Who was that? Before I could answer, the phone lit up again. And again. And again. Within an hour, it was a full-scale assault. Voicemails from numbers I'd deleted 4 years ago. My father, my aunt, my grandmother, and, of course, my mother. I listened to hers first. Her voice was polished, performative, like she was leaving a message for a client. Lena, darling, it's your mother. Sara called me. She said something. Well, unbelievable. She's very upset. You can't let this old jealousy divide the family. Call us. Click. Jealousy. Not congratulations. Not how are you. Jealousy. 2 days later, a courier delivered a letter. Thick, cream-colored paper. Expensive. My mother Helen's looping. Perfect handwriting. I opened it. The first line pretended warmth. Sara's expecting. You're going to be an aunt. Maybe it's time to heal. And then, the calculation. The real reason. Your father's been struggling with his work. The roof on the house needs a full repair. As you know, family supports each other. The final line, sharpened to a perfect point. I know you're not a cold person, Lena. I read it twice. I folded the paper, once, twice, 3 times, until it was a small, tight square, and I dropped it into the kitchen trash. That night, I opened my old therapy notes from Dr. Walsh, the file labeled Boundaries. I reread a line she'd told me. They don't miss you. They miss the role you used to play. I sent a new letter to my mother, Helen. If contact is to continue, there are 3 conditions. 1. No requests for money. 2. No manipulative guilt. 3. No surprise visits. I don't need apologies. I need space. A week later was the annual Seattle Education fundraiser. Vertex Analytics was a primary sponsor for the new STEM scholarship. The hall shimmered in gold light, the air thick with perfume and the murmur of conversation. Liam squeezed my hand. You ready? I nodded. And then I saw them, by the silent auction table. My mother in pearls. Sara in pale blue, her pregnancy just starting to show. They saw me. And they started walking over, smiling like we'd just had brunch. Lena, darling, my mother's voice was honeyed steel. We came to congratulate you. You've done so well for yourself. But you must remember, Lena, she continued, leaning in, her voice dropping. Success means giving back. Sara is preparing for the baby. And your father? He still needs that roof. She was pitching me, in public. The strain was immense, the heat climbing my spine. I let her talk. I let the silence stretch. Then I smiled. Excuse me, Helen. I turned to the host, who was passing by, and signaled to her. She nodded to an assistant. The assistant appeared with a single, pearl-white envelope I'd prepared earlier that day. Just in case, I walked to the stage. I took the microphone. The chatter in the hall died down. Good evening, my voice was steady. It filled the room. Tonight, Vertex Analytics is proud to sponsor the STEM scholarship, but I'd also like to make a personal contribution. I held up the white envelope. I'm donating $80,000. A gasp from the crowd. I looked for my family. They were frozen, staring. To fund a new scholarship, I continued, specifically for young women who have been told they don't deserve help. The hall was completely silent. Then applause started, slow at first, then rolling like thunder. I looked straight at my mother. Her smile was gone, cracked. My father, who had just entered from the back, was frozen mid-step. I spoke, my voice clear and final. You once called it an investment, so do I. I handed the check to the gala chair. I nodded to the crowd. And I walked off that stage. I walked right past my mother's stunned, white face. I walked past Sara, who was staring at the floor. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I found Liam, took his hand, and we walked out of that glittering false room and into the cool, clean Seattle night. After the gala, I didn't post a thing. No photos, no captions, no victory laps. Silence, I've learned, spreads faster and heavier than any headline. The next morning, I woke up to a city washed in mist. The lake was a sheet of flat, silver gray. I stood by the glass wall, barefoot, the wood floor cold beneath my feet. I held a warm mug of tea, but I wasn't drinking it. I was just listening. My phone was on the kitchen counter, face down. It hadn't rung, not once. No angry voicemails from my mother, no texts from my father demanding I apologize for their public humiliation. Nothing. For my entire life, their silence had been a punishment. It was the cold shoulder, the withdrawal of approval, the empty space at the dinner table. It was the sound of not being good enough. But this silence, this one was different. This wasn't a punishment, this was the consequence. The air in my house felt still, clean. This silence wasn't loss, it was earned. I heard the quiet grind of the coffee machine. Liam came up beside me, handing me a fresh mug, swapping it for my cold one. The smell of dark roast filled the air. He didn't say anything for a long time, just stood with me, watching the mist. You okay? He finally asked, his voice low. I took a sip. The coffee was hot, grounding. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for a decade. Yeah, I said, finally. He smiled. A small, knowing smile. You looked lighter last night. After your speech. I thought about that. The word lighter didn't feel quite right. I wasn't lighter, I said, looking out at the water. Just finished. Finished. The thought settled over me, as calm and complete as the mist. The account was closed. The books were balanced. I had taken their $80,000 investment and turned it into an $80,000 scholarship. I'd given it away, and in doing so, I had taken back every last piece of myself. It was the best investment I ever made. Later that day, after Liam left for work, I walked into my office. The house was still, just the faint hum of the servers in the closet. My desk was clean. Just my laptop, a notepad, and on the wall, a single, small, glass frame. Inside it wasn't a diploma. It wasn't an award from Vertex Analytics. It was the green laminated bus pass. The one my father gave me for my birthday. All those years ago. The one they said meant responsibility. I used to look at it and feel a sting. The sting of being the practical one, the one who got the lecture while Sara got the confetti. But now, I saw it differently. That bus pass wasn't a symbol of their rejection. It was the symbol of my escape. It was the first tool they ever gave me that actually set me free. It was the start of my real education. It taught me how to navigate the world on my own, how to find my own roots, how to get where I needed to go without ever asking them for a ride. It didn't mean responsibility, it meant freedom. I sat at my desk and opened my journal. The one Dr. Walsh had me start, the one I hadn't written in for months. I turned to a new page. I wrote the final entry. They taught me that love has to be earned. I learned that peace doesn't. I watched a heron take off from the water's edge. It rose into the fog, its wings beating slow and sure, not fighting the air, just using it. It disappeared into the gray. I thought about everything that had led me to this room. The quiet nights coding under that yellow lamp, the rejection disguised as practical advice, the endless, grinding need to prove my own worth, to build a case for my own existence, spreadsheet by spreadsheet, line by line. And I realized, in the absolute quiet of my $5 million house, none of it owned me anymore. The fight was over. The need to prove was gone. I wasn't the echo. I wasn't the silence. I was just Lena. In the distance, the rain started, tapping softly against the glass. The same Seattle rain that fell the night I drove away from that dinner. The same rain that streaked the windows the day I signed my name to my own company. But it didn't sound like sorrow anymore. It didn't sound like struggle. It just sounded like proof. If you've ever been told you weren't enough, if you've ever been made to feel small so someone else could feel big, remember this: you do not have to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. Sometimes, walking away is the loudest, most powerful answer you'll ever give. And if this story stayed with you, tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far silence has carried you.